Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So I'd like to welcome everyone this evening, and it's so nice to have so many people here. So one of the things that when people think about Buddhist monks, a lot of times it can conjure up a lot of images, a lot of perceptions, some of them accurate, some of them not accurate. You know, a lot of times people will have these images of Buddhist monks as living off in the forest, up in the mountains, in the caves, images of sitting meditation. Sometimes they'll think of Kung Fu monks in China. And but one of the things that uh, comes up as a lot as an image for people and a perception of people is that monks is this image of monks chanting. And and this one is true. Monks do quite a bit of chanting, and chanting is part of the lifestyle for monks. And so a lot of times, you know, people, you know, they when they see this or they monks chanting, you know, it can seem kind of confusing, especially to people who are new to Buddhism, because you know, for a lot of us, when we came to Buddhism, we came for the wisdom teachings of Buddhism. You know, we came because we recognize that this is something that, you know, can help us in our daily lives. This is a way to reduce our suffering, to eliminate our suffering. You know, we read the Four Noble Truths, and it's very logical. It's very, you know, it just for a lot of us just clicks. But then we see something like monks chanting, and we think, well, that doesn't make sense, you know, like keeping morality, you know, living a good life, that makes a lot of sense. You know, purifying the mind through meditation makes a lot of sense. Developing wisdom makes sense, but you know, why are they chanting? Why are the monks chanting? Doesn't that seem, you know, just like kind of a an antiquated practice, an ancient thing? But it for us, it really has a lot of importance. There's a lot of reasons for why we do chanting. Different places you go in different monasteries will do it in different amounts. So some will do a lot, some will do a little, some will do as a group, some we do chanting on our own. At the monastery I ordained at, Wat Pah Nanachat, it's in the tradition of Ajahn Chah, and he had us doing morning and evening chanting together. And there's a lot of reasons for this and a lot of benefits for this. So, in the beginning, when Buddhism first started, in the time of the Buddha, for a lot of religious texts and religious works, they didn't write them down. And, you know, for a lot of monks, monks were coming from all different levels of society, all different levels of education. So, you would also have a lot of people coming who, you know, weren't literate, couldn't read, couldn't write. And, you know, if you're a monk living in the forest, you know, carrying around books, you know, could get quite heavy. Paper could get quite wet and destroyed. So the general way to remember teachings and to transmit the teachings was through chanting. You'd memorize it with a chant. And when you memorize it with that, the chants always have a bit of a rhythm, bit of a tune to it almost. Not quite to the point of a song, but you know, and this helps make it a little easier to remember. It's kind of the same as, you know, the remembering the national anthem, you know, because it's got a little bit of rhythm to it. It's usually much easier to remember than if we just tried to remember the words. So this was for many centuries or many long period of time. This was how the texts were passed down to us, were transmitted to us. And so we do this to carry on the tradition, continue the tradition, but it also has a lot more practical effects here and now for us. So one of them is that when we do the chants, we, at least in the monastery I come from, we always make sure to do them in Pali, which is the original language they were in, the language from the time of the Buddha. And we also do them in English. So we actually understand what we're saying and we can understand the teachings. So we carry on that tradition, and a lot of these things we chant in the morning and in the evening are um, they're not very, some of them can be a little more faithful, but they're not very fluffy or flowery. These are straight teachings from the Buddha, from some of the essential suttas and teachings of the Buddha. So by chanting them, we do them again and again, and they can really sink in. They can really get into our mind. Just something you hear again and again. And so sometimes you can bring this up when you start situations come. Sometimes these chants will just come to mind. I remember when I was up a cow, so a layman staying at Wat Panana Chat. I had only been there for a few months, and I just started learning some of the chants. And I remember someone else in the monastery had kind of got me a little angry, had done something, and the metta, or the loving kindness chant, just kind of popped into my head. And you start thinking, oh, may they be free from suffering. And so it was really nice. It just popped in, and it was kind of a reminder of these essential teachings of the Buddha. Mm. And one of the things is it can also help us in developing our meditation. So when I was uh, went to go live with Lumpur Biak. I stayed with him for about 4 years, and he had us do these very long chanting sessions. And in the beginning, I didn't want to do them. I thought, I'm getting to go stay with this great Kruba Ajahn, this great enlightened teacher. I just want to do sitting and walking meditation and nothing else. And he had us, right after I arrived, he had us do these really long chanting sessions. And it's like, oh no, I'm just going to be wasting my time. But I had a lot of faith in him. So I went with it and I did what he said. And I found that it really helped me for developing my meditation. And once he asked me, do you want to get really deep meditation? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, okay, do a lot of this chanting. And doing that, repeating these things again and again and again can help calm down the mind. It can, because sometimes if we've had a busy day or something has really agitated our mind, sometimes it feels like it's really spinning, it's really out of control, and it's very difficult to bring down and get a hold of. So doing these chants, it's because it's, we're speaking, it's more active than just watching the breath, and it can be a great way to calm down the mind and help bring it to stillness. And so there are some of these benefits to it. And when we do these chants, again, the chanting book that we use isn't very long. So a lot of these chants, you do very frequently, and they really get in there. And there's one chant that is really a good one that monks do almost every day, or should be every day. It's called this one, the 5 things to be reflected on again and again. So this was a teaching of these Buddhas of these 5 things that he wanted us to reflect on again and again. So the first thing is that I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become separated from me. And the last one is, I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. So these short reflections are really, really powerful reflections for us. And these ones we can do again and again throughout our day and throughout our meditation. So the first one is, I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. At first you hear it and you're like, well, of course, I know I'm going to get old. I don't know. I need to reflect on this. But a lot of times it doesn't really sink in. We don't really realize that we're going to get old. So when we reflect on it again and again, it's so that it really sinks in, so that it really um, becomes something we understand on a deeper level. Because you see so many people, it all of us hits them at some point, and you see something and it reminds you, oh wow, I've gotten old. I didn't think I was going to get old. And when it hasn't sunk in that you're going to that get old, we have, the Buddha talked about this thing called the intoxication of youth. So, when you're young, you feel young, even though you may, on some level, know you're going to get old. But on the deeper level, on this felt level, you always feel you're going to be young. You always feel, there's always time ahead of you. You have plenty of time, but it's not that way. So we have to reflect on this again and again, keep bringing up just to remind us. And then when we do become old, it's not such a shock to us. We've already understood that this is going to happen. And also reflecting on this, reflecting on old age, it can bring up a sense of urgency within ourselves, an urgency in our practice, and understanding that, we do only have a limited amount of time, but we don't know how much that time is. And so encourage us to practice more and do the things in life that are important. And the next one is, I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. So again, similar to the last one, it's something that we can understand on a certain level, but a lot of times we don't really understand it on that deep level. So we reflect on it again and again. And again, this is another one that Buddha talked about, the intoxication of good health. And you can see it in your life. When you're healthy, you never really think you're going to be sick. And then something happens and you get sick or you get injured. And it can completely change the way people view life or relate to life. So you see someone who maybe gets cancer and recovers from that, and it completely changes their life. And so we want to reflect on that so we can get the benefits and that change of life without actually having to go through that, because at some point we are all going to go through sickness. And the next one is, I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. So this is a really powerful one, this idea of death contemplation. And this is a very deep practice for people to be doing, because again, we, even though on certain intellectual levels we understand death, we never really understand it on that deeper level, or we never really think, it can happen to me. So, the Buddha talked about, he used this simile, this comparison to someone who can hear about death in another village, far away, and it affects them and it moves them. But then there's another type of person who that doesn't affect. But when they hear about a death in their own village, it can affect them and move them. And then you have a third type of person who even a death in their own village won't affect them, but a death in their own household, in their own family, will affect them. So, when we reflect on it more and more, we're trying to make ourselves more like the first one. And so this is a powerful reflection for us. And the fourth one is, all that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. So this is, when we get material possessions, we get different things, we attach to them. And the more we attach to them, when they do eventually break, when we do eventually lose them, when someone takes them from us, we suffer. So by reflecting on this over again and over again, because inevitably they will break, everything's impermanent. So we aren't going to suffer in the same way over it. Luang Por Chah used to have this saying. He would say, the glass is already broken. Because, if you have a glass like for drinking, it's just in its nature that it's going to break. So, if you reflect on it and you keep that in mind, this glass is already broken. So when it does eventually break, um, it'll affect you, or it won't affect you so badly, sorry. And you'll be able to not suffer so much over that. And then the fifth one is about karma. And so this is for us to remind us that our actions have results. So this is really to encourage us to really take care in our actions of body and speech and mind, and just remember that whatever we're doing, there's going to be some kind of result from it. So we want to really make sure to uh, purify and be really upright and good in how we act, how we treat people, the things we do, the things we say, and the things we think, because they will have results. And so if we really can understand that what we're doing is going to have a result or is somehow going to come back to us, we're only going to try to do good things. So it's really going to encourage us and move us on in our practice. But it's really important when we start reflecting on things like this to really watch ourselves and watch the results that these reflections can have on us. So generally when we're practicing like this, like say for example, we're uh, contemplating death, it should have a, you should feel lighter. It should have almost a happiness that comes from it. Even though it sounds quite morbid, contemplating death or contemplating old age, when done correctly, it feels very freeing, very light, very like you feel very open. But sometimes, depending on your personality, sometimes it can have the opposite result. So with some personality types, when they practice a lot of something like death contemplation or body contemplation, sometimes it can bring up some anger, some frustration, some depression. So you might feel like if today you were doing some death contemplation, in a day or two, you might be in just like really unexplainably grumpy mood. So if you're finding that doing a practice like this is giving you some kind of negative results or isn't giving the result, isn't making you happy, isn't reducing unwholesome mind states, it might be something that you want to pull back from a bit. Don't do it as much, or take a break from it from a bit and start working on developing your samadhi, your concentration, developing more loving kindness. This is a really important factor for us and an important aspect for us in developing our meditation and developing our practice is just this ability to reflect and constantly be watching and reflecting on what's happening from uh, our practice. What results are we getting? We have to be patient with them. The results do take time, but just really be watching. Am I getting good results from this? Is something good happening or something not good happening? And then being able to look back and trying to look at the cause of this and then adjust things uh, in accordance. So, for example, if we get, good meditation, just think, okay, well, what did I do differently this time? What and reflect on that and try to do it again. We don't want to force it though. Sometimes you may get a good meditation and you think, okay, next time's going to be just as good. And then if it isn't, you get really down on yourself or really hard on yourself. Just remember it's meditation, it's always going to be ups and downs. When I was a junior monk living at Wat Mopjan with Ajahn Nando, I was in the office one day chatting with Ajahn Nando, and he asked me, how's your meditation going? And I said, well, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. And he just started laughing. And he said, that's just how meditation is. It's sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. So we have to keep that in mind that we can't just judge uh, our practice just by each sitting, each meditation sitting. So, if you get one bad sit, don't think, oh, no, I've lost it. My practice is going bad. I'll never get it back. Just remember, we can keep doing it. We can keep getting it back. I knew this one monk, and he went to go live in a meditation monastery in Burma, which has a very structured system, and they have like daily interviews. So very different from the way we practice in the Thai Forest Monastery. And he things were going good, having a good time, but then he hit this period where he just couldn't stop thinking. Like he just couldn't meditate. Every time he sat down to meditate, his mind would just go go crazy, and he couldn't, it was really stressing him out, and he felt he couldn't handle it anymore. So after a week of it, he went to his teacher and was like, "Yeah, this is what's going on, and I can't get it under control. I think I'm going to have to leave." And his teacher just looked at him and said, "Bante, you've been mindful before, so you can be mindful again." And it really helped him. It was really like, he understood, okay, it's not like something has fundamentally changed. I can do this again. And he was able to be patient with it and get over it. And eventually it went away, and he was able to get back to practice as normal. So I'd like to maybe offer this to everyone as a bit of a reflection for this evening.